All righty. Hey, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Carla. Hi, my friends. Annabelle. How are you, Annabelle? You must be on, I'm not sure if she hears me. Hi, Annabelle. And let me go ahead. As we're having people join, folks, we'll get started literally in about 2 minutes here. People are still coming into the waiting room, so thank you for your patience. And Chris, mic check, you good? Chris Carino?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Awesome. All right. Good. So everyone's having a good week so far, almost to the end of the week. I hope everybody's looking forward to the weekend. Okay. I've also shared my screen. Can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. You should be seeing first page where it says injury reporting and management. Yeah. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Let me just make sure that there's nobody else in the waiting room. You got somebody? Cool, we just admitted that person. Jose just came in. That person. All right, good. I think we got everybody that we had registered, so great news. Okay, so folks, again, good morning. My name is Rob Singh. Most of you know me. I am one of the risk managers for the San Jose branch. And I also have Chris Carino, who is another one of our risk managers at the branch, and he'll be helping me out with the presentation.
Hello, everyone.
So between both of us, we'll kind of cover some of the material here. And again, we see a lot of our friends here, so we appreciate everybody attending. This is going to be pretty much a straightforward presentation, not as long and be pretty brief. And first of all, we appreciate the partnership that you have with us here at BBSI. As you know, BBSI has been around for a long time. Back in the 1950s, early 1950s is when we started, and our entire goal, really, when it comes down to it, is to help small and mid-sized businesses thrive in every capacity, whether it's growth, whether it's in HR, risk management, business development. Bottom line is that we see ourselves as an extension of you. And yes, we have a great workers' comp program, and we do all that. But really, the ultimate goal for us is to be a consulting agent for you to help you thrive as a small business. And again, that does include, of course, the workers' comp product. So today, what we're going to be doing is discussing, a piece of that workers' comp product, which is really, really, really critical. And one of the main objectives today is to ensure that we assist you with having in your organization a very impactful injury management program. And this is so critical to have just because of the fact that if things are not done in accordance with best practices, that your injury management experience or your losses can really go backwards. And what we have is a very, very systemic approach of how we guide our clients towards managing injuries. And we kind of look at that from the front end and then the back end. So the front end obviously is entailing the injury reporting piece of it, the claims reporting, getting the final notice of loss or the red folder to us, getting the claim into the system. And then the second piece of it is the back end, which involves investigation, if OSHA is involved. Ensuring that we're working with the employee on, number one, getting them the best care possible, but at the same time, making sure that the claim is moving along, right? We want to make sure that the claim is moving along. We want to make sure that the claim is ultimately progressing towards closure. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, is really the front end. The first piece of the meeting today will be going through the reporting piece, the BBSI reporting procedures to ensure that we have proper claim setup. And then secondly, we'll talk about the back end a little bit, and primarily more on the investigation side of it. how to do a proper investigation from a risk management standpoint. Okay. So feel free to obviously, ask questions. And Chris, maybe you can help with, the chat function and things like that as we're going through this as well. Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll monitor that.
Great. Okay. Now, you all can see my screen, right? Or do you see, is that better? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the different roles, we all have together in terms of managing injuries. So the first is your role as the employer. And what is your role? Well, your role is to be really, it's almost, like a four-legged stool, but your leg is really kind of, one of the most fundamental pieces, right, of that stool. And your role is to make sure that, you're educating your employees on ensuring that they are reporting injuries, that they're adhering to the policy you have for injury management, for workers' compensation. Your role is to ensure that you're adhering to, the mod duty policy that you might have and enforcing that. We'll talk a little bit more about mod duty in detail because it's going to be a very significant topic we have today. And then your role is to also do, what we call constant care contacts, where you're checking in with the injured employee. And Chris can attest to this, and a lot of you can attest to this. I've been just so, I've been doing this for 27 plus years, and I've run risk management for 3 or 4 of the largest companies in the world. And I've seen a lot. And one of the things that is a cause for litigation, where employees get an attorney for the workers' comp case is because that they don't feel the love. They don't feel like they're being supported by the employer, or for that matter, the carrier, right? And it could be because of that. So believe me, there's shared responsibility there. If they're not being supported by the carrier or the adjusters and things like that, they can also get frustrated. So really, it's a shared responsibility in terms of the support that we need to provide them. And then again, somebody just said hi. Sorry about that. So, and then again, one of the other things is to make sure that the employees, your job is to make sure that the employees also understand what their roles are. And what is their roles? Well, again, we talked about this, report an injury, make sure that they're attending all the doctor's appointments, ensure that they're providing all the medical work status reports to you after every single visit. And then, you and that employee and the supervisor, whoever is sitting down, talking about the work status, talking about the restrictions or what have you, and following up. And then that they're regularly communicating with you on the status of their care and or concerns. Again, I go back to this. If they're concerned about, hey, I haven't been in touch with the adjuster, or the adjuster hasn't been in touch with me, or what have you, or I'm not getting a response, or I'm not getting paperwork I need, or I'm not getting a referral approved for physical therapy appointments, that is at that point, if you're checking in with them on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, right, then you can go ahead and communicate those issues to us, to BBSI, because BBSI here, as you see, is the liaison. We're the liaison between you and Corvell, who is the third-party administrator or the carrier. Okay, so a lot of people think, well, because people sometimes don't understand the relationship between BBSI and the Corvell. So BBSI provides you that workers' comp, through Chubb. Chubb is the actual workers' comp insurance provider for you. And then every insurance provider, like such as Chubb or name it, State Fund or whatever, right? What they also do is sometimes they utilize a third-party administrator or a carrier to administrate those claims. And Corvell is who we use. And Corvell's been around for a long time. They work with some very, very large companies, yeah, they have a very reputable, they have a huge reputation. And like I said, they've been around for a long time and they work with some of the largest companies in the world. Okay, so that kind of goes through our roles and understanding, who we are in the claims management process. So let's talk about a couple of policies that you should have in place One is, you can just have a general injury reporting policy, written out stating, talking to employees or illustrating employees the responsibility in reporting injuries, what the employee's responsibility is, as well as what the employer or the supervisor's responsibility is. Okay, and we have templates of that too that we can provide. In fact, the template is going to be in something I'll show you here in a second, because another policy that you should have is a return to work on mod duty program. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about cost. Workers' comp, along with payroll, is one of the biggest cost drivers in any company. Injuries cost money. The workers' comp premiums cost money. And the way workers' comp premiums are calculated, just so everybody knows, and again, I know a lot of people have a lot of good experience in this, but workers' comp premium is calculated by payroll, by the job classification code, or what we call the workers' comp code. So depending on the nature of your business, if you're in construction or if you're in white collar, right? So construction code might be something like 5432, which is the carpentry code, or 5430. That would cost more per 100, per every $100 in payroll. Okay, so the riskier the work, the more your workers' comp premium will be. And then there's a third factor involved there, and that's called your mod rate. And again, most of you understand what mod rate is, but mod rate is basically it's a ratio. So everybody in industry generally starts off at a 1. It's a ratio. So the way it works is if you're a landscaping company and you are just as good or just as bad as everybody else in losses or injuries, you're all at a 1. So 1 is basically your standard. But because of injuries or the type of injuries, right? And how much you spend on those injuries. Every time you have injuries or those injuries are severe or those injuries have lost time or temporary disability, those increase your mod rate. So let's just say you had not so great year in injuries. And you had, not only a number of injuries, but a number of those injuries were temporary disability. They had lost time. The doctors actually put them on work because they're severe. Or you can accommodate mod duty and we have to put them on temporary disability. But what happens is that mod rate goes up. And let's say that mod rate went up to 1.3. So now what that basically means is, in essence, I'm simplifying this a lot more. Believe me, it's a very, very convoluted formula. But ultimately what that means is that you're paying now 30% more on top of your regular premium, or 30% more than everybody else would be paying, traditionally for workers' comp. 30% more is a lot, right? So you add that 0.3 modifier on top of what we call your pure premium rate. And again, how that's affected is number of injuries and type of injuries and cost. So having a return to work program is critical, because what we want to do is make sure that we're always accommodating restricted duty. And I cannot stress this enough. If the doctor puts them on mod duty, you should do everything you possibly can to be creative. Now, Chris is on the call, and one of the things that we stress is that for every single injury, we'll go into this a little bit more here, but for every single injury that occurs at your facility, yes, we'll go through paperwork, but the risk manager assigned to you, whether it's myself or whether it's Chris or Joe Lara or Austin Smith from the Monterey office, right? You should be notifying that risk manager immediately about the injury. And there's a number of reasons why. We'll take a little bit of a left turn here and talk about that. Well, number one, we want to make sure that every one of those injuries, okay, are managed properly. So for example, if the injury occurred at 7 o'clock at night and Concentra, which is part of your medical provider network, right? You have your designated medical facilities, your workers' comp doctors, so to speak, right? Which are part of your NPN. And we always want to make sure, folks, and this is key, we always want to make sure that our employees always go to designated occupational medical clinics. And that's usually part of your NPN. And in our area here in the Bay Area, what you pretty much have is Concentra. You used to have US HealthWorks and you used to have Alliance Occupational. Concentra went in and bought all of them, okay? You also have Pinnacle, which is a really good program. You have Doctors on Duty. I'm not a fan of Doctors on Duty, to be honest with you, because what they'll do is they'll literally put people off work. Kaiser is actually part of our NPN, but they have Kaiser on the job. And again, same situation there. Kaiser has a tendency to, even if you go there with a personal injury, I'm talking out, I'm just giving my personal opinion here, but Kaiser has a tendency to say, hey, you know what? I hurt my shoulder playing ball, and then the first thing they say, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a scaffolder. Oh, well, you must have work-related injury, because they know that they can potentially convert that to work-related injury and continue on billing you, right? And have that injury paid for. So Kaiser has a reputation a little bit about that. And I apologize if anybody's working for Kaiser, don't kill me. But what we do want to do is make sure, we send them to a designated occupational work clinic. And Concentra is that main clinic along with Pinnacle that I would really, really recommend. Those clinics have partnered up with us. They understand they're specialists in workers' comp injuries, folks. They make sure that they're working. They're both pro-employee and both pro-employer. That's very, very important. And they also understand that your business, because you're part of BBSI, has an aggressive mod duty program. Okay, so they're not going to play games with you. Now, believe me, I'm going to say this a little bit because Concentra has been through a little bit of a change here in the last year and a half because of the pandemic. We are working very, very closely with senior management. In fact, we're going to be meeting with them. I'm meeting with them next week, senior management, to talk about a little bit of the changes, because what happened was a lot of those specialists in occupational medicine, those workers' comp doctors, they had to leave. So what they brought in was a lot of generalists, people that are in residency or physician's assistants, and they're not really fully grasping the whole workers' comp, treatment thing. And a lot of them are just extending mod duty forever, or they don't understand sometimes, and they're putting them on temporary disability, okay? We're working on that. But if the doctor puts the employee on mod duty, what you want to do is make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to accommodate mod duty. And then, as I said, if you're contacting your risk manager is going to ensure that investigation was done. And going back to the example, if that injury occurred at 7 o'clock at night and Concentra is closed, you're most likely going to have to take them to an emergency room or an urgent care. But what Chris or Austin, myself, or Joe, what we'll be able to do is guide you, or even your HRC, by the way, your HR consultant, we'll be able to guide you, say, hey, very next day, let's get them into Concentra. And I've seen this. I've seen claims go completely backwards because it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The employer sent a sprained ankle to a hospital, and next thing you know, the hospital put that sprained ankle, right, minor sprained ankle, off work for 30 days. 30 days. Can you imagine, right? What that does to your mod rate, what that does to your experience. So we want to make sure in those situations, the very next business day, we get medical management control. We get medical management control, and we reroute them back to Concentra or another NPN. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I do. So if it happens when one of the clinics is closed and you send them to the ER urgent care, should the following day when one of the clinics does open, should we have them go in for a follow-up to one of our clinics?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Elizabeth, absolutely. And just like I talked about, because you want medical management control, right? Because that urgent care, they're not workers' comp doctors, or they're not even specialist party. Sometimes they'll just literally put them off work for a week. And keep in mind, the first 3 days in California, this is specific to California, not other states, the first 3 days of lost time, okay, are not counted. Those are used by PTO or sick time. Okay, so if you have a situation that you have some wiggle room here to be able to get them into Concentra, so that Concentra can put them on mod duty. So yeah, Elizabeth, great question. Yeah. Anything to add, Chris?
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Just, yeah, we want to manage that claim as best as possible. So keep it in our network.
And then, and again, you know, and again, I want to urge you, notify your risk manager. What we want every one of our clients to do is notify the risk manager, because at the same time, there also might be OSHA situations too, right? Keep in mind, let's talk a little bit about the OSHA real quick here. If you have an injury that did go to a hospital and they got hospitalized overnight, folks, for more than 24 hours, it's considered it's considered a serious injury by definition of OSHA. So in California, Cal OSHA, what they require is any serious injury by definition, which is a death, amputation, disfigurement, dismemberment, or hospitalization, loss of an eye also, or hospitalization overnight for more than 24 hours, you have to report that injury to OSHA within 8 hours of your knowledge of the injury. Okay. So that's also another reason why you want to contact your risk manager ASAP, especially for those major injuries, those you know what, those situations. And believe me, you know, Chris and I, in our years of doing this, we've seen some horrific things. We've seen deaths, we've seen amputations, we've seen the most horrible things happen to employees. And, you know, we're also, you know, defending a lot of cases too. A lot of our clients come to us because of our OSHA assistance with them. And I'm currently defending 4 cases right now in court for our clients, you know, and the OSHA program. So there's a way to do things to make sure that, number one, we're reporting it on time, because if you don't report, it's $5,000 right there. It's a $5,000 hit immediately, citation. And then at the same time, we want to make sure that we're, you know, if there is a citation, we're helping you manage the citation. But that's the key though, is if you have a serious accident, as I described, death, amputation, hospitalization for 124 hours, et cetera, you want to contact your risk manager. Okay. All right. Let's talk. So again, have a mod duty program. And by the way, let me show you this here real quick, just so you can see this. Everybody should have one of these. If not, contact your risk manager and your HRC to ensure you have this BBSI toolbox, return to mod duty toolbox. And what this is an example. It's a sample program. It's a sample injury policy like I talked about. Okay. And you'll see here it's got, you know, basically everything that should happen for mod duty. The great thing about this also, folks, so here's a sample return to work policy we talked about. Okay. Injury reporting policies, employee responsibilities. Everybody sees this, right? As I'm scrolling down. Hopefully I'm not going too fast.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. Job offer letter. Because the other thing you want to do is every time you have a mod duty, you also want to make sure that the folks fill this out. And what this is, it's an agreement. It's an agreement between you and the employee saying, okay, you're on mod duty. Okay, Mr. and Miss Employee, here's what the mod duty restrictions are. Let's have a handshake deal. Number one, that you're gonna go ahead and adhere to those restrictions. A lot of times we see injuries go bad because employers are not, they're not following up with the injured employees on the mod, on the restrictions, right? So the employee, next thing you know, if they have a 10, 15 pound restriction, you know, they want to help. They're good people. You know, they care about their job. And then next thing you know, they're lifting 20, 25 pounds and they get hurt again. And injury just continues to linger because they're not adhering to the restrictions. So it's almost like this handshake agreement. Like, look, you're not going to go beyond the restrictions, and we're not going to put you in a situation where you're going to go beyond your restrictions. Okay. So this is very, very important to fill out when you submit to us that red folder, the injury reporting forms that come with your injury packet. You also have this in Spanish. Okay. And then this is the job description that needs to be filled out. Same thing in Spanish. And then this is what I like about this toolkit. We give you here specific tasks for mod duty that can be done with various industries. Automotive, carpentry, right? These are all different examples of things that you can think of to have them do if they're on mod duty. And again, the other thing is your risk manager is trained on how to help you accommodate mod duty, all right, and different things that they can do, because as you know, as risk managers, we understand your operations, and we can sit there and think about, okay, well, what can they do according to modifications? Now, I understand there might be situations where you're like, I absolutely cannot do this. What are the alternatives? Here's alternatives. You can use a company called Reemployability, right? And Reemployability is basically a company that, and it costs altogether about $1,000 to get them set up. And what they do is they put those people with nonprofit agencies like Salvation Army, you know, Goodwill and things like that, where they're supervised, and this company actually monitors the mod duty and ensures that they're reporting all those other things so that they're still going to work, but it might be necessary that they cannot come to your office. If you want more information about that, contact your risk manager, okay? Contact your HRCs as well. The other thing is salary continuation. A lot of you know about salary continuation. Salary continuation is basically where you're like, I absolutely cannot accommodate the mod duty, you know, and there's nothing I can do. But again, you don't want to flip the claim into a temporary disability claim because of, right? Again, it hurts your ex-mod, all these other things, because once your first dollar is paid by temporary disability benefits, it's going to hurt you. So what a lot of clients opt to do is salary continuation. The person is still technically on mod duty, right? But you're just paying them, but they're staying at home. Now, here's the problem with that. If I'm Rob Singh and I'm on mod duty and, you know, BBSI cannot accommodate me, and I get to stay home this weekend and watch the NCAA tournament and watch my Gonzaga Bulldogs crush it, right? I'm going to keep going to the doctor and be like, yeah, you know what? Shoulder does still hurt a little bit, doc. Yeah, it does feel kind of sore. Okay, well, let's put you on mod duty for another 2 weeks, right? If I'm at home and I'm getting paid to stay at home, do you think there's motivation for me to continue to tell the doctor I'm getting better or to adhere to physical therapy appointments or whatever? No, I'm going to keep selling the doctor a bridge about how hurt I am. The only way we can combat that is through objective medical testing. In my prior career, previous life, long time ago, I used to be in the clinical world. I was a therapist. I used to treat these injuries. So, you know, at some point, you know, you have what we call subjective, right, treatment, and then objective was you have to get to a point where we do maybe some functional strength testing or MRIs and things like that, you know, to actually see if there's a tear. But again, now you're putting more costs onto that injury, right? So yes, there are alternatives, but I think the best alternative for everybody is to make sure that they're accommodating mod duty, okay? All right, so if you don't have this document, contact your risk manager, and we'll make sure that you have it. Going back to the presentation here. All right, let's talk a little bit about the different types of injuries and what to do in those situations. The first type of injuries, you have basically our first aid, right? Now, everybody should have a stocked first aid cabinet or kits in your workplace. If you're construction, by the way, you have additional regulations. And some of you know this because you're working with your risk managers, is you actually have, there's a list, there's actually a very specific list OSHA makes you have in that first aid kit, right? They make you have this many different bandages, they make you have this many different gauzes, you know, things like that. And then at the same time, if you're in construction, you're required to make sure that somebody is certified in first aid, at least one person at a job site. So those are construction safety orders. But if you're not in construction, at the very least, make sure you have a well-stocked first aid kit and you're inspecting it. Make sure that there's no medication in there. Okay. If there's medication in there, ibuprofen, things like that, what you're doing is you're putting yourself at liability, right? You're giving somebody that could be expired, whatever, or you can give it to somebody that might be allergic to it. You don't want to mess with that. Make sure that your first aid kit has things on it in it that are not expired, right? So you always want to make sure that, again, you're replenishing it and ensuring that it's nothing's in there that's expired. So again, first aid kits. So the first thing is, if you have an injury that can be dealt with a first aid kit, use it. You got a scratch, okay? Maybe even a minor burn, go for it. Treat it as first aid. That's internal first aid. And then you have external first aid. Right? External first aid is using somebody like on-site health and safety. And if you're not familiar with on-site health and safety, what they are, they have no affiliation with BBSI. They're not part of BBSI, but they're an external mobile, right? It's almost like a mobile clinic. But what they do is they have paramedics, nurses, EMTs. What they do is they come out to your site and actually do advanced first aid. So what they can do is take a pretty bad injury that would normally be treated as a workers' comp injury at a clinic and treat it as a first aid. So for example, I've seen them do huge gashes, where, it's basically just like right here, and they're able to do glue and stereo strips and things like that. I've seen them treat back injuries, shoulder injuries tremendously. They do a very good job. And that can also be another way to make sure that those major injuries or somewhat major injuries, okay, can be treated as first aid, and it keeps you away from workers' comp. It keeps you away from being filed as a workers' comp claim. You don't need to tell us about those injuries. Now, as a risk manager, I want to know about those because those are still considered near misses. So your risk manager, during your quarterly reviews of your injuries and things like that, will also want to make sure that, hey, let's just say you only have 3 workers' comp injuries, 3 medical injuries, but you have like 12 of these on-site injuries, right? Near misses. Well, we still want to know about that because you still have a problem with injuries. Okay. If you want more information about that, again, contact your risk manager and we can set that up for you. On-site health and safety. And then you have the traditional, right, occupational health injury that gets treated. And we all know about that. I talked about that earlier, where they're going to a consent or what have you. The great thing about our program too is now, every time there's injuries, you all know you're going to call 24/7, the triage or our hotline for the injury. And with that, 3 things are going to happen, folks. One is self-care. The nurse will just say, hey, you know what, you're okay. I just saw one yesterday in our system where the person was having inhalation issues and they called it in. And it was actually more of a personal related situation, where they're kind of hyperventilating. So we treated that as self-care, nothing else to do there. So that's the first thing that can happen. The second thing that can happen is that they speak to a triage nurse, and then the triage nurse routes them to a particular clinic, consent or what have you. The third thing is they can actually get treated by a doctor via the phone or through what we call telehealth, as you see here. Okay. And at that point, the employee doesn't even have to go to a facility to get treated, and then they continue to be treated with a telehealth doctor. All right. Now, again, you always want to make sure that you use 24/7 to call in the injury. There's going to be times, folks, where you actually had sent over the employee to a consenter, and that's okay. Just follow up and make sure that you're using that 24/7 number to at least generate a claim. And just let them know that, yeah, you already sent the employee over to consent or what have you. And then the third type of injury we have is emergency. Okay. Those are situations like we talked about, right? It's after hours or something like that. And we want to make sure that, hey, don't even worry about sitting there and calling 24/7, whatever. Call 911, get a paramedic there, get the employee help. They're going to go to a hospital. They're going to go to, Regency in San Jose. They're going to go to Connor, what have you. They're going to go to Good Samaritan, okay? And And at that point, again, contact your risk manager, monitor the situation. If we have to contact OSHA, we have to contact OSHA, whatever it is, right? But what you want to do is stay engaged with the employee, okay, or with immediate family members to see what's going on with the employee. And then deal with the paperwork, the 24/7 information later, folks, right? We're not going to sit there and be like, hold on, your arm is bleeding, it's cut off, stop, let me fill out the paperwork. No, get a medical care and then deal with the aftermath of it later. Any questions?
I want to kind of throw in a shameless plug in here. We do offer, for those of you that are interested in first aid CPR and don't have, I want to have your employees trained. We do have trainings. We do have one later this month, but that class is totally full. So I'm not sure if you guys got the safety or the risk training calendar for the year, but if you haven't, let your risk consultant know and we can send that out to you and you can register for first aid classes and classes like this throughout the year directly through that to the links inside that worksheet. So just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you. And we'll be offering more of those as well. And by the way, if you have a situation where you have like maybe 5 or 6 or the whole crew, let us know and we'll actually do it on site for you. Okay, we'll coordinate it with you to actually conduct that training on site. All righty, let's talk about steps. So injury happens. Again, let's kind of stick with the whole, 3 type of injury scenarios. The first thing is you want to call the 24/7 injury intake number, right? Our process. Let me show you this here real quick. Let's go back to our form here. Everybody should have one of these. Let's scroll up here, apologize. I'm gonna go back to the top here, here we go. Okay, this is our injury packet, everybody. Everybody should have an injury packet, whether it's in a physical form or red folder, as most of you know, or an electronic. Everybody should have one. This is everything you need to ensure an injury is submitted to us, because it also has the number to call, as you see here. So the first thing you're doing, right, is you're calling the triage. And this, again, those 3 things are going to happen. Either self-care, they're going to speak to a nurse to get medical treatment, or they're going to get telehealth. And again, it's okay if you already sent the person to a clinic, just make sure you follow up with this number here to initiate the claim. Okay, because the claim will be generated, we'll be notified of it in our system, and then our workers' comp coordinator like Ruby or somebody, okay, what Ruby's responsible for doing, she only handles the front end piece of it. What Ruby's responsible for doing is make sure every single day when we see all the claims that come in into our system generated by this process, that we reach out back to you and say, hey, Mr. or Miss Employee, thank you. It looks like we got a claim generated. Can you please make sure that we have this red folder to us here within the next 24 hours? And some of you already have sent over, but so what Ruby does is, you're sending the injury over to sjinjuries@bbsi.com. And sometimes, a lot of times, the red folder will already be in there. So before she even notifies you, she'll check sjinjuries@bbsi.com, okay, or even the business unit they belong to ensure that we don't already have the red folder. Okay, so here's the number, and again, all these instructions are in your red folder, and this includes the DWC-1 form that has to be filled out. By the way, folks, I want to talk a little bit about the DWC-1 form now that I have it. We have a little bit of a problem with a lot of our clients where they're not completing this DWC-1. This is the most important document necessary to file a claim. It's a state form. It's basically saying that, hey, under penalty of perjury, I'm filing a claim, right? So if you have a red flag claim, if somebody is playing games with you, if it's a shady claim, whatever, right? This is the form that they're basically swearing under testimony, or not testimony, but they're in a sense here, any person who makes or causes to be made any knowingly false or fraudulent material statement or material representation for the purpose of obtaining or denying workers' compensation benefits payment is guilty of a felony. So if somebody's filing a false claim, right, then we have this document, right, to potentially pursue legal action. But the problem is a lot of them, our clients are not filling this form out. This whole thing has to be filled out completely. The employee has to sign it and the employer has to sign it. So here, the employee and then you as employer, make sure both parts are filled out, folks, and then get this to us along with all the other documents here in the red folder. Okay. This has the mod duty offer. This has the NPN notice of rights. This has a witness statement. And as we talk a little bit about here in a second, it has the investigation and supervisor form, which is this right here. Here. So this is the supervisor, because this is what the supervisor can say, yeah, this is exactly what happened, or this is not what happened, right? So we have the employee form and we have the supervisor's forms, and they're kind of split up, right? So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna call 24/7, report the injury, okay? And then from there, you know, direction will be taken as to what the employee needs to do. Again, whether it's self-care, occupational clinic, or what have you. But make sure you call that 24/7. We should have the red folder submitted to us, folks, within 24 hours. And again, I know there's some exceptions, especially if you have an emergency situation where the person's in the hospital or whatever, and things like that. But you might be getting an email from us. But again, you know, we ask that this gets sent to us within 24 hours. Okay. So step 2, injured employee seeks medical treatment. Okay. And this is really, really important. This is what we call the closed loop care contact process. It's really critical that, and we'll go through this exercise. And some of you have heard this from me when we've had injury reviews, claim review meetings, and things like that. So bear with me. But, you know, let's say Chris is my supervisor. I'm the injured employee. So Chris sends me to Concentra. So Chris tells me, okay, Rob, hey, gosh, I'm sorry about the sprained ankle. You know, it looks like since we call 24/7, right? We call that triage. It looks like the doctor, looks like 24/7, the nurse is going to send you to Concentra here in Milpitas. Do me a favor, as soon as you get there, call me. I want to make sure you got there okay, right? And so I get there, I call Chris, right? Because I also don't want to sit there as a supervisor. I don't want to sit there and say, hey, look, you know what, this guy can go and you know, kick back for a little bit, you know, drive around, whatever, and finally get there. No, I want to make sure he gets there immediately. So Chris is going to tell me, as soon as you get there, call me. I want to make sure you got there okay. And then, you know, I get there and say, hey, Chris, I'm here, about to go see my doctor. Okay, great, no problem. And if there's also issues, if there's like 2, 3, or 4 hour waiting period, I want to know about it, right? Then you can communicate to us. We got a problem with Concentra and Milpitas. Their wait time is 4 or 5 hours. It's not cool. So I call Chris, let him know I'm there. I go to my appointment. I have my appointment. I see the doctor, and then the doctor puts me on mod duty. So right afterwards, I call Chris again because Chris told me, "Hey, do me a favor. You know, have a good visit. Call me right afterwards, and let's discuss what your appointment was like. Let's discuss, you know, how it went. I want to make sure that you're okay. And by the way, the doctor is going to give you this form. It's called the work status report, and we'll talk about the work status report. So I call Chris afterwards. Hey, Chris. Hey, boss. I'm good. Yeah, the doctor said I got a sprained ankle. He says that I've got some, you know, sit down duties that I can do for the next 2 weeks. And then in about 2 weeks, I can go back to work. So I'm on my duty. Okay, great. Great, Rob. Thank you for letting me know. Do me a favor. Send me a picture. Text me a picture of that work status report right now. Okay, great. I send him a picture of my work status report. And then tomorrow when you come in, Rob, let's sit down. Bring that work status report with you. Let's sit down, go through the work status report, go through the restrictions, fill out the mod duty offer in the red folder that you just saw. Let's have an agreement that we're not going to put you in a situation where you're going to exceed restrictions. You're not going to do it. So we sit there and we talk about the restrictions and include the person's supervisor, folks, because the personal supervisor is the one that's going to be working with that employee and checking in with them on a weekly basis, right? So you have the discussion. And they said, okay, by the way, Rob, it looks like your next appointment is on April 1st. Oh, and on March 30th, you have a PT appointment. Okay, great. I'll tell you what. I'm going to remind you a couple days in advance on both things, okay? Because I'm going to put it on my calendar. You put it on your calendar. And let's make sure that we get you your PT appointments. Let's make sure we get you to your fall dogs appointment. At that point, we're partnered. It's a shared partnership of injury management. So I write it on my calendar. Employee writes it on their calendar. And then I remind the employee, hey, Rob, by the way, remember you have your PT appointment tomorrow. Good luck. And then let me know how your PT appointment goes. And then on April 1st, when he goes to the doctor, again, when Rob goes to the doctor again, same thing, rinse and repeat, close the process. I go to the doctor, same thing. I call him, I got there okay. I call him after the appointment. I send the text over with the picture of the work status report. And the very next day when I report back to work again, I go through the same thing. If mod duty has changed, right, you go ahead and change the mod duty form, right, to make sure that you now have a new mod duty offer. Okay, this way, what you're doing is you're managing the care. And so after you had your red folder completed, remember you have a red folder, all the paperwork is there. What you should be doing is saying Rob Singh, date of injury, March 24th, 2022. I've got all paperwork. And then every time the employee comes back and meets with you after the doctor's appointment, you chronologically put in the work status reports until the claim is closed. Is Annabelle here? Annabelle. For American, I saw her. But I was gonna say, but I know Annabelle does a really good job of doing this, because, they're again, these injuries are yours, folks. You own these injuries. So you want to make sure that you're managing them. And this way, I should never, or the adjuster or anybody else should ever be able to call you and say, hey, what's the status of this employee? That's the key thing here, folks. Nobody should ever be able to call you and say, hey, what's the status of this claim? What's the status of this injury? You already know because you're meeting with them every time they go to the doctor. You have work status reports. They're being filed chronologically, so on and so on. You always know what the status is of injuries. And if there's problems, contact us. Problems with referrals or whatever, or you think that, the person is not getting what we call MMI, contact us. They're not getting better, whatever. Okay. The key thing is to get them the best care and then at the same time close out the claim. Okay, I already talked about all this in terms of the follow-up and all those things and making sure that they're talking to you about the clinic visit, all those things. All right, so we went through all this. All right, now what I want to do is discuss investigations. All right. The whole point of investigating every injury thoroughly is to make sure that the injury never ever happens again. So we prevent that injury. Now, I will tell you this, by law, OSHA regulation requires whenever there's an injury, in the injury folder, you have what we call a 5020, right? Which is basically your notice of injury that gets generated. And 5020 actually gets generated by the carrier, but in lieu of 5020, you can just have one of these forms here, the what, where, who, how, when of the injury, right? We just need details. And then OSHA also requires that you have an investigation of those injuries, okay? Along with, as you know, folks, putting on the OSHA log. So again, little side note, Make sure these injuries go on your OSHA log within 7 days. If it's medical treatment, if it's first aid, don't put it in your log. If it's an injury where it required medical treatment, and by definition, it goes in your OSHA log within 7 days. So it's just a little side note. Okay. It is very, very important that you investigate every injury so it doesn't ever happen again, or you got lessons learned. And by the way, again, OSHA will look at these documents. If it's a serious injury, OSHA will come in, they'll do investigation. They'll turn your entire operation upside down, right? Because, and those serious injuries, they actually come in and they look at all the paperwork, they look at your entire program, they look at the injury, what happened, was the proper investigation done? And most of the time, I gotta be honest with you, sometimes I see the most vanilla of investigations, folks. And what it'll say is, person had a contusion of their head. They bumped their head, or they had a back injury, right? Or they were in a forklift accident. That's all it says. And then on the corrective action, they'll say something like, the employee needs to be more careful. No, especially like, situation, let's take that forklift example. What happened? Okay. Was there something that was blocking the view of the employee? I see people all the time where they put signs and things like that in the glass ahead of them, or they were not paying attention, or did somebody come out, outside of the forklift walkway? You actually have to do what we call a root cause analysis. Why did the employee get hurt? Okay, in the forklift. Was he not wearing a seatbelt? Did it tip over because the tires were flat? Whatever it is, ask the 5 whys, right? It's kind of like a thing we use in risk management. Well, why did the person get hurt? Because they're driving too fast. Well, why were they driving too fast? Because there was a rush and somebody was somebody was blocking the path of travel where they had to go another way. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. There's a number of different reasons, but ask 5 whys, right? So what you want to do is make sure that a thorough investigation is occurring here. So was there any unsafe conditions that contributed to injury? By the way, take pictures. Right? So a thorough investigation involves making sure that you take pictures. So if it's a serious injury where, potentially the employee has to go to the hospital, there's blood all over the place, there's equipment involved, this is what we want you to do. We want you to act as though it's a crime scene. I always talk about this. Preserve the evidence. So let's say a person fell off the ladder, right? You're going through the investigation. Person fell off the ladder. Well, why did they fall off the ladder? Because they fell backwards. Well, why do they fall backwards? Well, it was the ladder was unstable. Well, why was the ladder unstable? Because they didn't tie off. Oh, that's what it was. They didn't tie off. The ladder wasn't tied off, or the ladder wasn't at the correct pitch point. Okay, that's what happened. Or the ladder was defective. So what you want to do is you want to preserve the scene. You want to preserve evidence. Take that ladder, right, and decommission it for a while, right, and inspect it to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it. And if you want to green tag it, great. Only after you've documented that you've checked everything out, you've checked the equipment, and everything is okay with the equipment. Because what OSHA will do, they'll come out and they'll literally act like CSI. They'll take pictures, they'll look at the accident, they'll have you even maybe lock that tag out the equipment until they clear it, right? But what you want to do is, again, freeze the accident, take pictures, get as much detail about the accident as possible, get witness statements. Okay, document. Now, keep in mind, everything you put on this form here, folks, is discoverable in the court of law, including OSHA. So if you have another story, you have some other information if you have other information, right, that is pertinent, but you don't want it to have it discoverable. Let's just say you say, well, you know, this person's got disciplinary issues, or we have a personal issue with this person, or they're just being, you know what, you know, you have some issues regarding this person that you don't want to share, because with this document, it's very, very objective. Again, imagine this document being shown in a court of law, right? What happened? The nature of the injury, very, very, very objective. And what you can do is you can have a separate memo to file. Let's say the injury or the claim is a red flag claim. You happen to know, right, that this person was playing, you know, playing basketball over the weekend. You happen to know from somebody else, right, that they saw a person, or the person went to the gym, or that somebody told you that, yeah, this really didn't happen. You know, red flag situations. Have a separate memo to file. Don't put it on this. This is not where you want to put that information. And then what you do is that separate memo to file, share that with us so that we can share with the carrier or investigators. Okay, Chris, anything to add in terms of the investigation?
No, I mean, you pretty much touched on all the pertinent points. I mean, it's just like peeling layers of that onion, finding, you know, all the little intricacies of what happened and getting to that root cause, you know, just find out truly what caused the accident. Was it behavioral? Was it equipment failure? Really finding out what caused the accident. That way you can prevent it from happening in the future.
Yeah. And what I would like also for you folks to do is have a corrective action. Okay. So over here, for example, it says, what are you doing to prevent this type of accident in the future? What you can do, right, is have another document that you attach to this with corrective actions. So let's go back to the ladder example. Let's say the ladder is defective, it is missing a rung, or the footing of the ladder was, you know, was in some way not where it should be. You know, maybe the rubber footing was off or whatever, and it slipped underneath, right? So what you would do is say, okay, corrective action. Chris, our maintenance manager, to remove ladder from service and purchase new ladder and have it available for operations by February 26th. Okay. So then what you do is you have a number of corrective actions, or you might say employee to be trained. So you have that corrective action. They have employee to be trained on inspecting ladder prior to use and ensuring that no safety hazards exist. Okay. So you have a number of corrective actions, and you should literally write those corrective actions in this document, or if there's no room in this document, add another document, and then have a closed loop process to check. On March 25th or March 26th, I'm going to check. Okay, did we get a new ladder? On February, by April 1st, I'm going to make sure that the employee was retrained. And by the way, folks, one of the things I want to mention is don't be afraid to not use this document here. Does everybody see this? What do we see? What is this called? It's a safety correction. It's basically disciplinary action, right? For safety. Don't be afraid to write people up for unsafe hazards or for unsafe work, right? This is very, very important. If the employee was at fault, right? We have a situation where we're defending one of our clients, you know, in cases where basically it was, you know what, they bypassed the guards, you know, and it was a really bad injury. Their hand got amputated because they bypassed lockout tagout procedures. So instead of locking out the machine, tagging out, de-energizing it, and stopping the machine, they wanted to go ahead and adjust, okay, whatever they're working on, while it was going through the process of it. Basically, it was sheet metal, and the sheet metal was being cut, and the sheet metal bowed. So what they wanted to do was unbow it, and they took some tool and went in to it, trying to unbow it. Next thing you know what? Their sleeve got caught, the gloves got caught, and they amputated the finger. So in this situation, we have in OSHA what we call an employee action defense argument, right? So OSHA will go out there and they'll cite you, they'll fine you all this money, but if you have this argument saying, look, we did everything possible, we had all the guards in place, okay? We have procedure, we have a lockout, tagout policy, all these other things, but it was the employee. I can't keep an employee from running a red light or walking across a crosswalk, right, in a green light. So that's what we do what we call the EAD. If you don't have one of these in place here, folks, you didn't write them up, then your EAD is not valid. And that's part of your investigation process. Okay? So again, do not be afraid to write employees up for not working safely. And that should be part of your investigation. The risk manager, like I said, you're going to be calling your risk manager every time there's an injury. So the risk manager will also make sure that you've done a proper investigation, that they're comfortable with the investigation as well. And we might even do our own investigation, our own investigation. Okay. All righty. So that is our presentation. Let's open it up for questions. We have this presentation up until 11:15, so we have a few minutes for questions. Any questions for anybody? Anything I didn't cover? No? We'll make sure that we send a copy of this presentation to everybody, along with some of these forms, to everybody that registered. Okay, so you will make sure you get all the information. Again, I do want to stress the mod duty. It's really, really important. And by the way, just as a side note, it is part of our, our relationship with you guys. It's part of the contract too that we have with you all, that we want our folks, accommodating mod duty. We're seeing a little bit of an issue with that, where folks are not accommodating mod duty. But again, there's ways to do this where it will tremendously help you with your workers' comp costs and things like that, your XMOD. So we really want to make sure we push that. At the same time, the other thing we're seeing a lot is we're seeing, investigations not being properly done. So please work with your risk manager and ensure that investigations are properly done for every single injury. Okay. All right, Chris, anything to add as we close?
No, just to stress that what you said, if you have an injury, report it to your risk manager. You can even reach out to your HRC. Just let the business unit know so that we're aware of the injury as soon as possible.
Down.
Yeah. Hey, Annabelle, I was bragging about you and you weren't there. What happened? I was bragging about you because you do such a good job in terms of that whole work status follow process, where she's so connected with the employees as they're seeing the doctors. Again, this whole thing I talked about in terms of the closed loop care contact, where they're seeing the doctors and then immediately connecting with the supervisor, discussing the work status report, the modifications and things like that. And then Annabelle does a fabulous job for her company, and she's really, really engaged. And again, there's never a situation where I can't call Annabelle and say, hey, what's the status of the claim? She'll tell me what the status of the claim is. And again, that's the whole point, folks, is we should never be able to call you and say, hey, what is the status of this claim? Because if you're following this injury management process like we described, you always know what the status is. And again, if there's situations where you do need to know, whether it's maybe referrals or temporary disability payments, or basically they're going to go on surgery, or there's a settlement or settlement compromise release, all these other things that can get technical, of course, that's why we're there to help you out. Okay, but if it's basically just a standard claim, right? If you follow that process, all your claims should be running smoothly. Okay? Okay, folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will go ahead and put my email here. And Chris, if you can do the same thing. And I'm gonna put my phone number too. You can always call me if you have any questions, right? 24/7, I'm available, right? So Chris, if you want to put your information there as well, that's my email and my cell phone number.
Where are you putting it?
In the chat.
It's not showing up.
Oh. I put it in the waiting room, sorry. There we go, oops. Let's see, at BBSI.com, 48. All right, here we go. So if anybody wants to take a screenshot of that, most of you already have a lot of our information. Again, feel free to reach out to your HRC, your HR consultant, your risk manager, or anybody, your business unit, your business partner, whether it's Gary, Brian, Bob, or Sharif, right? We're all here to help you. Okay, Chris, is it in?
No. Oh yeah, there it is.
Okay. If everyone wants to take a screenshot of that too, we were your presenters and we are extremely grateful for your participation. Thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your week and a weekend. Okay, take care.
Bye everyone.